بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Welcome you all to lesson number 9 in the book Aqidati, My Belief. And we are still going over the second unit of the book, which is pertinent to the pillars of Islam. We have covered so far the first and second pillar of Islam, and today inshallah ta'ala we'll go over the third pillar of Islam, which is to give the zakat, the obligatory charity. It is proven in the Quran and the authentic Sunnah that the zakat, the obligatory charity, is one of the pillars of Islam. Hence it is incumbent upon Muslims to give zakat once the conditions are met. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Exalted, said, وَأَقِيمُوا الصَّلَاةَ وَآتُوا الزَّكَاةَ, and establish the salah and give the zakat. And we have also from the very famous hadith of Jibreel, which proves all the 6 pillars of Iman and the 5 pillars of Islam, that when he was asked by Jibreel, tell me about the pillars of Islam, and he mentioned for him the 5 pillars of Islam, including giving the charity. We have also the hadith of the Prophet, peace be upon him, when he sent the companion Mu'ad, may Allah be pleased with him, to Yemen. He told him to tell the people that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had written upon them to give zakat taken from their wealth to be given to the poor and needy of their region. So this is to express explicitly that zakat, it is obligatory upon people. The idea of zakat, that the wealth in which we receive in this life, it was accessible for us to receive it by the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, by the permission of Allah the Exalted. So therefore, as a mean to express our gratitude to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and to show that we are thankful for providing for us, Allah told us to give a part of that wealth to the poor and needy. A parable, just to bring the idea close to our mind: if someone, for instance, tells you, I'll give you 40,000 Saudi riyals, but I have one condition, and that is to give 1,000 out of that to the poor and needy. Will any sane person refuse such offer based on, I will not accept the deal because I have to give up 1,000 of it to the poor and needy? Certainly nobody would refuse such offer. This is the case with Allah's provision to us. This wealth would not have been, or we would not have received this wealth or being placed into our pockets unless Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allows that to happen, and He is the one who provides. And His condition for us for receiving such wealth from Him subhanahu wa ta'ala is to give 1 out of 40 of it to the poor and needy, which is 2.5%, and we'll get to know the other items which we are obliged to give zakat, charity, for once we meet the conditions for that. So this is a mean to display our gratitude to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and to share whatever Allah had provided for us, and let the poor and needy sense the mercy which people may carry for each other in this life. So let us go over what are the conditions. Once they are met, it becomes incumbent upon us to give this obligatory charity, as zakat. The first condition is Islam, meaning that such money given as a charity will not be accepted by Allah unless this first condition is met, and that is to be a Muslim. If a non-Muslim gives charity to the poor and needy, it will not be counted for him as an act which Allah will reward him for in the hereafter. Why is that? Because he needs to meet the prerequisite for this charity that he's giving, which is to become a Muslim, so that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who accepted for people the deen of Islam as a way of life in which they should practice, Once they comply with that and accept Islam, then Allah accepts their good deeds. Other than that, Allah will not accept or count for them the good deeds that they do. So the person must be a Muslim in order for his zakat to be accepted and rewarded for. Secondly, that person must be free. Freedom is the second condition, meaning that that person is not a slave. The slaves are exempted from giving charity, even if they had a level of wealth. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had exempted them from giving the charity. Of course, the issue of slave and slavery, we do not have it these days. It was part of the deen in specific cases and conditions, but these days it's not available, it's not practiced. But back then, when such issue was there and available, if a slave had wealth with him, he is exempted from giving the charity to the poor and needy because he's owned by his master in this case. And also the issue of slavery, it depends upon the situation in which the Muslims may go through. If there was a case where the Muslims had to fight enemies and captives of war were taken, Islam allows those captives to be taken as slaves as a mean to discipline the enemies, not to even think of harming the Muslims. But still, despite all that, those who are taken as slaves, they are dealt with as members of the family. They eat like we eat, they dress like we dress, or their masters dress. So it is a mean in which to convey the religion of Islam to this category of people, and at the same time Islam looks forward to also, after delivering the message of Islam to these people, to free them. That's why you'll see so many issues in the deen as a way to make up for any sins and to wipe the sins from being recorded against us. I mean, the ways to expiate for that is to free a slave. So in many cases, Islam calls for the freedom of the slaves, but it kept the issue of slavery available in one single case. This is if the enemies came and tried to approach the Muslims, and the Muslims have the right to protect themselves, and as a mean to discipline those enemies, it is permissible to take captives of war, and at the same time to deal with them as human beings just like us, living with us, dressing like we dress, eat like we eat, and so on. I had to a little bit explain this issue in details because some people take this matter as a mean to attack Islam, but to tell people that Islam looked at this issue in details and depth earlier, before many nations until few centuries were indulged in. Islam took care and handled this issue 1400 years back. So there are books which are clear in expressing this issue to people who have some doubts about how Islam deals with the issue of slavery. The third condition is ownership. You must own that wealth. So if you don't own it, it's not incumbent upon you to give zakat. So that money, that gold, that silver, that category of items like stock or specific crops that you plant, you must own it yourself in order to give the zakat for. The fourth condition is the nisab. And what we mean by the nisab is the wealth must reach a specific quantity in order for it, or for that wealth to be applicable to give zakat for, a charity for. So in the case here, the author mentioned the wealth must reach a specific amount or quantity. This is called nisab. For instance, the nisab for gold is 85 grams. Also, if somebody possesses gold, if the gold reaches 85 grams and more, then he needs to give 2.5% out of that to the poor and needy. But if it were less than 85, then there is no zakat or obligatory charity upon that person to give. And similarly the case with other items that we'll get to know what the nisab, the required quantity to be met in order to give charity for, in case of the money, in the case of silver, and the livestock and so on. So we give, in the case of money, gold and silver, 2.5% in zakat, or the equivalent for the gold and silver in money. The fifth condition is al-hawl. What we mean by al-hawl, that you must complete a full 24 or 12, sorry, to complete full 12 hijrah month, lunar month. So once it is completed and you have the nisab, like in the case of gold, 85 grams or more, then here it becomes incumbent upon you to give 2.5% in charity to the poor and needy. Some of the items of zakat do not require the completion of al-hawl, 12 hijrah month. Rather, once you receive that item, like in the case of the harvested crops, immediately once you harvest it, you give the charity for that crop, and we'll get to know what is the nisab for it soon, inshallah. So those are the 5 conditions. The one must be Muslim, must be free, must own that wealth, must reach the nisab, which is the required quantity in order to give zakat for, and must that wealth must be possessed by that person for a 12 whole hijrah month, then he may give the zakat for. Why do we give zakat? Why do we give zakat? The author mentioned here, it shows submission to Allah Azza wa Jal commandments, because Allah the Exalted, He Himself commanded us to give the zakat. So that is why, as a mean of complying with His instructions to us, we are with full acceptance do respond to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala command to us to give to the poor and needy. So it is a command from us in the Quran and from the Prophet, peace be upon him, in the authentic Sunnah, and we are complying with Allah's instructions to us. Secondly, it purifies oneself from greed and stinginess. So to give people and to share with people, this is as a mean in which you are freeing yourself from wrong practices or wrong behavior and morals that we need to free always ourselves from, and to not to share with others or give to the poor and needy. Such practice will really make us enjoy life like no other times. And of course, once you give to the poor and needy and you see the smile in their faces, this will help you even share more and more and get rid of this maybe bad practices which holds you from sharing part of your wealth with the poor and needy, and to meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with a generous spirit that cares for mankind. Also, thirdly, helps the poor and needy. When you give, you are helping the poor and needy. Of course, we do see around us so many poor and needy people, and if Allah had provided you with some wealth, then it is a mean of kindness and carrying care in your heart for those who are in need, for some of the wealth that Allah had bestowed upon you. So to go on and help those poor and needy who are so many around you, this is a good gesture, and it implies that you are a person who carries a spirit of care to those needy people. Fourth, makes the Muslim community as one family, where the rich feels for the poor. So once we live in a community and the rich shares some of his wealth with the poor, this will make the community so intact. It will free the feelings of the poor and needy against you, because you're sharing with them, you are helping them. This will make the community so intact and a place where everyone enjoys living in such place. Also, as a fifth point, puts down the animosity of poor against the rich. When the poor holds his money for himself and he looks for people and looks and sees people around him who are in need, in some cases or in many cases they are not even available, allowed or able to even provide for their children food and the necessities of this life. So once the poor looks to the rich living in a such way where they don't care for the poor and needy, many animosity maybe and feud be carried in their heart against the poor and needy. But once that person who is rich and gives to the poor and needy, this cleanses the heart of the poor and needy from holding any animosity against those rich people. So this is a good gesture to make everyone in the community happy and satisfied, and even make dua, supplicate for the rich to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless whatever He had provided for everyone in that community. The sixth point, increases the wealth through Allah's blessing for those who give. Of course, when you give for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah blesses the wealth that you carry and you have by increasing it and make you use it in a good and proper way where you don't sense that you're losing your wealth at all. So like Prophet said, peace be upon him, مَا نَقَصَ مَالٌ مِّن صَدَقَةٍ. Wealth will not decrease because of giving charity. We do sense that whenever we share and give to the poor and needy, Allah provides for us even more, and Allah blesses the wealth that we have and carry in our pockets, subhanallah. Seventh point, a reason for allowing Allah's favors to descend upon people. Once you hold your wealth and not share part of it with those who are in need and poor, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will hold His favors from being bestowed upon us. And this is something that will really make us suffer in this life. So to enjoy this life and to enjoy Allah's favor upon us and let it descend upon our communities and ourselves, giving charity and feeling for the poor and needy allows Allah's favors to be sent down upon mankind. So these are some of the wisdoms behind giving the zakat, the obligatory charity to the poor and needy, like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala stated in the Quran and the authentic Sunnah. Let us go over some of the categories of items in which we must give zakat for if the conditions are met. The first type or category of items is the gold, silver, and money. And of course, once the five conditions are met for this specific category, the gold, the silver, and the money, then we need to give 2.5% out of that to the poor and needy. So the nisab, the quantity that we need to possess for a full year, once it is with us for a full year, then we must give 2.5% out of it to the poor and needy. For the gold, the nisab, the quantity is 85 grams or more. For the silver, it is 595 grams or more. While for the money, we measure the amount of money based on the value of gold or silver, whichever is beneficial for the poor and needy. Meaning that if evaluating your money based on silver is better for the poor, then you evaluate your money based on the total amount of 595 grams of silver. Then from there you may give 2.5% to the poor and needy. So for instance, if 595 grams of silver, each gram of silver costs 1 riyal. So if you possess 595 riyals, then for a full year, then at the end of the Hijrah year, you must give 2.5% out of that to the poor and needy. Like in the case of gold, if it were like 100, for instance, riyals per gram, then 85 gram will be worth 8,500 grams. In this case, it will not be beneficial to evaluate your money based on gold, because you will not give to the poor and needy unless you have 800 or 8,500. But if you evaluate your money based on silver, which is 595 grams, which is worth like 595 riyals, In this case, it will be beneficial to evaluate your money on silver. Then you'll be giving charity for less amount of money that you possess. So this is how to evaluate money that you have. And for the gold and silver, if you possess gold and you have 85 grams and more, then you see how much it costs in the market, and you may give out 2.5% in money to the poor and needy. Not necessarily you have to give it out in gold. So if you have 84 grams, then in this case, it's not required from you to give zakat. But if you have 85 and more, you must give 2.5% out of that, or the monetary equivalent, in charity. The second category is livestock. Livestock only deals with camels, cows, and sheep. So other category of animals, even eaten animals like chicken, rabbits, and so on, deer, we don't give obligatory charity for, only for camels, cows, and sheep. So if a person owns a specific number of any of the cattle mentioned above, then he must give a number of them as zakat. So given that he possesses that nisab for a full hijrah year, and the animals are grazed without cost. So if these animals, cows, camels, and sheep, are grazed in open lands without you are buying their grass or so, here you must give zakat once they reach a specific quantity. Okay, but if you are feeding them costly, you are paying for their food, in this case, here you are exempted from giving zakat for this livestock. So it's only if they are fed openly in open lands without you even planting for them what they eat. But if you plant for them what they eat, or you buy for them what they eat, here you don't have to give the charity for these types of animals. So here, as an example for the nisab for the sheep, the author mentioned that if you own 40 to 120 sheep, you must give one in charity. If you own them for a full year and a full year passes, you must give only one sheep in charity. But if you have less than 40, then you don't give a sheep at all. For 121 to 200, 121 to 200, you give 2 sheep. For 201 to 300 sheep, you give 3. And for more than that, then you give for every 100 1 sheep. If you own 400, you give 4 sheep. If you own 500 sheep, you give 5 sheep in charity, and so on. And the camels and cows, they have a different nisab than the sheep, but here the author mentioned as an example only the sheep. The third category of items that you must give zakat for are commodities displayed for trade. If you have a store and you sell items, you need to evaluate at the end of the hijrah after 12 months, not necessarily at the beginning or the end of the year. From the time you started the business and from the time you owned the nisab, the required quantity, you count 12 months. So it could be any time through the year, but you count 12 hijrah months. So in your store, you evaluate all the items that you have, and you see what is the selling price, but not the cost, the selling price of all the items, and you give 2.5% in charity to the poor and needy. The fourth category is agricultural dry products like wheat, barley, rice, dates, raisins, and so on. So such items, in the case of giving the charity, here we don't need to look into the fifth condition, which is al-hawl, the completion of 12 months. In the case of agricultural items, once it is harvested, you give in charity. And how much do you give in charity? Here it is said, once they are harvested and the quantity is 5 wasaq. 5 wasaq, this is a measurement in Arabic and used to be used back then. Each wasaq, it is an equivalent of 60 sa'. The sa' is like 4 handful, 4 handful. Each handful is called mud. 4 of them is called sa'. 60 of the sa' it's called wasaq. So around 1200 mud. 1200 of that amount. If your harvested crop reaches that 1200 2 handful of crop, then you must give a charity for it. It's around 700 to 900 kilos based on the type of item that you harvest. So here, but there is a condition here. If 10% of it, it is said once they are harvested and the quantity is 5 wasaq or more, then 10% of it should be given as zakat. This is if the crop was irrigated by rain. So if the crop was irrigated only by rain alone, then you must give 10% of it. But if the farmer went on and bought water or dug a well, for instance, and it cost him to dig a well to get water to irrigate his field, then here he gives only 5% of it as a charity. So if the his land was irrigated by rain most of the year, then he gives 10%. But if his land was irrigated by costly means, where he go and he buys water and so on, most of the year, then he gives 5% out of the harvested crop. If it reaches the nisab, which is, like I said here, 5 wasaq, almost 1200 mud, around 700 to 800, maybe may reaches 900 kilograms. The fifth category of items is earth minerals and ancient treasure buried before Islam. So if someone finds a treasure which was buried before Islam, okay, here he should give 1/5 of it, 1/5 of that found treasure to the poor and needy. Of course, there are other categories of people who may receive the charity beside the poor and needy. There is 8 category of peoples. But here I'm mentioning as an example to the poor and needy among the categories of people who receive the zakat. So in the case of finding a treasure in a land, you dig and you find the treasure. If this treasure was known to be a treasure buried prior to Islam, then you may own it and possess it, but you need to give 1/5 of it, 20% of it, to the poor and needy. In the case, if this money or treasure that was found and was proven to be after Islam, here it takes a different ruling. You must, because it must have been owned by a Muslim person. In this case, it takes the ruling of something called luqata, a found wealth or found money. You need to define that wealth in the area for a full year to see if somebody comes and claims it for him, for his fathers and so on. If it was proven that it was theirs, then you must give it to them without taking anything at all. But after a full year passes, if nobody comes and claims it, then you can use it yourself and you can benefit from such wealth. The second issue within the minerals and something brought out from the land, if mined minerals such as gold, copper, zinc, oil was taken from the land, it was excavated from the land and you owned it yourself, here you should give 2.5% of it to the poor and needy and the other categories of people who deserve to receive the zakat. So in the case of minerals found, here you give 2.5% out of it to the poor and needy. So this is just to summarize that zakat is obligatory upon every Muslim once he meets the 5 conditions, and these are the 5 categories of items in which we must give zakat for if we meet again the 5 conditions of giving the zakat. So by this we have completed the third pillar of Islam, and coming class inshallah ta'ala will complete the remaining pillars of Islam. Barakallahu fikum wa jazakumullahu khaira, wa all praises are due to Allah, and may Allah's peace be upon His Prophet Muhammad. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.